Hi, everyone. Absolutely delighted to do another episode of this. Last week, we had a fantastic coaching conversation, and we had people obviously on our app asking questions and submitting them. And it was a great interaction. And I'm really excited to do another one of those episodes. I'm also going to do this on Twitter Spaces. So everyone's getting a different access as well. And of course, you can watch this via YouTube on our live stream. You can watch this via the app, which is incredible, by literally logging in the app and seeing it, or in any other format. Now, the questions that I've got today are quite curious around individualized training. What are some of the advantages? How do you develop individuals? And there's going to be some other topics around that. So I'm really excited to share with you some of these questions. So I'm going to put this now on the Twitter space, which is great. And if you can, as you're joining in, it's great to see some people from the app I can see logging in. Feel free to post your question in the live chat or on the YouTube chat, and we can go from there. So obviously excited to do this and across different platforms, which is great. So I'm multitasking. Okay, so diving in, we've got a great opportunity to discuss individualized training and equally any topics that you may have. So with individualized training, for me, it's very important and very clear that when we're coaching players, everything should be individualized. Everything should be specific to the person that's in front of us. So the player is literally the project, and we're trying to find ways to stretch and challenge that individual to get the best out of them. Now, that can be done through many different methods, whether it's one on one, whether it's small group, small area work, whether it's individualized within your team practices, your squad practices, your match preparation, or other types of methodologies. The absolute key is understanding who's the person in front of you. So, how is thinking straight away the process of who's the person in front of you? What's their motivation and why they're here? How can I stretch and challenge that individual? What's going to get the best out of them? What's their strengths? What's their areas for development? What's their footballing identity? What is their game? Because we make a lot of reference to the game, but actually we've got to consider their game. What does their game look like? And in doing that, we're creating a process of an individualized plan that we should almost be co-designing with the player. We should be co-designing with the player, getting their feedback, their curiosities, and figuring out what works for you. What do you think? Getting them to show us video clips for us to give feedback on, and having that dialogue and that discussion. And then that should inform our session objectives, our session intentions, and of course, our practice design to meet the needs of that individual and the individuals within the collective, as well as thinking about our coaching behaviors. So, how am I going to tailor some of my behaviors to match and support the individual? So again, lots of opportunities to share some ideas with you. And I've done this in many different ways, whether it's some of the activities I explained before, whether it's doing a team practice, but actually there's certain rules or challenges in place, or I've used it and designed an area so it creates a particular problem for that individual. And that individual then has to solve that problem or find ways to solve that problem. So these are really key. Again, seeing the individual as a project uh, and finding ways where you can individualize not just your practice design, but your feedback. And that's absolutely crucial. I'm just going to put a tweet out now and please share this with as many people as you can. So I'm going to put here individualized training discussion. Come join. Love Twitter. So we've got Jonas listening on there, which is great. So again, I would also be looking at when we're creating individualized work. I talked about feedback. So how does your behavior support that player? How and when do they want to receive feedback? Can the player have an opportunity to decide how and when they receive their feedback? I think that's absolutely crucial. In addition to that, I would also think about how do we design individual difference within the practice. So, of course, we've got our team principles and everything that we're going to try and work on. But within that, we're thinking about individual difference. And what does that look like for this? I was also asked a question around how important is it to develop the individual over the team? That question, I think, is a bit of an unusual one because I think there's many ways I could answer this. One being that there's often a danger that we always focus on the team, and most coaches can treat the team as that's the most important thing, and you've got to win the game. And look at me and look at my ego, and they forget that there's individuals within that team. But equally, you can go completely the other way where you're prioritizing individual players at the detriment of that team. And we need to remember that the objective of the game is that we're finding ways to work together in order to solve a collective problem, whether that's individually or collectively. The game, whether it's 4v4, 7v7, 9v9, 11v11, 8v8, whatever the format, age, and stage you're working at, it's about understanding that we've got to develop these players so they know how to work with each other to score more goals than the opposition. So for me, that's really key. How you do that is making sure that the team is an individual platform and it's designed in such a way that gets the best out of that individual. Because not every individual is right for specific groups. So when coaches are having these discussions about should this player play up or down, I'd probably rephrase that language as well. I'd talk about play across age groups. If he's an under 12, he's playing in the under 14s or whatever it may be. Is that the right age group for him to be in? What's the age group look like? Who are the individuals that are going to stretch and challenge that person? Who can we sign him with to get the best out of him? It's all this type of stuff that you've got to consider. In addition to those things, I think you've also got to consider, is he ready? Just because he's the dominant player in that particular age group doesn't mean he'll be the dominant in the next one. And there's other factors that I'm touching on, and they're probably other subjects. But just going back to the individual bit, the team should be a facilitator because of the individuals within that group to provide a platform for that individual player within that collective to excel. And of course, I think the role of the coach is to be really skillful in how they design and create experiences, learning experiences for players where they're being challenged, but they're also getting an opportunity to show off their best talents. And yeah, absolutely key. Find out what makes them wobble. Find out what makes them do really well. What does good look like? What does great look like? What isn't so good? Why not? How is that different on different days and different scenarios? And then perhaps even going one step further, where we always talk about the technical, tactical stuff, but actually, how can we go beyond that and look at things behind? So when players are talking about and they define themselves as footballers, if you're taking that away from them, in the US, it might be you've got tryouts every year, players get retained or released. They call it cuts over there. That player's, seen as what? What is he now? In the UK, if you're talking about the professional game, it's similar in terms of that players are, the first thing is that they're trying to do is learn how to survive. Every year, can I be retained? Can I get another contract? And in that, some of those might go on and play professionally, some won't. But the danger then becomes if they're defining themselves at 14, 15, 16, 19, 18, whatever it may be, and they're saying like on their Instagram or their Twitter, I'm a footballer. Well, if we release them and we take that away, what are they now? And of course, I and anyone listening knows that they're not simply just a footballer. They're more than that. They're a person that obviously just happens to have a talent and plays football, soccer. But what we're trying to do is I'm trying to emphasize the point of getting into the mentality of the player, because that player might not see it from that perspective. They describe themselves as this soccer player, footballer, baller, whatever they want to use. So if you take that away from them, their whole world is destroyed. So I think when we're thinking about individualized training and developing the individual, it comes back to that first piece, which is what motivates him or her, what motivates them, and why are they here? Because once we can answer that, and we know a little bit about their character and their personality, we can probably skillfully try to design some other things around that. Open to any questions. Really wanted to answer just a couple of those that were sent in via the app, which is great. And if you've got any questions, feel free to post them in the app now, and I'll be able to see them, and it'll pop up on my screen. Or anyone that's listening on YouTube, you can watching it live. Again, similarly, you can post your question in the group chat, and I can respond, or even on the Twitter space if you're listening on Twitter space. And I'm just excited to bounce some ideas around. Really, for me, there's no right or wrong way, and I think what we can do is make this a regular conversation where we're exchanging ideas. Jonas, I'm going to put you on the spot because I can see you on Twitter space. I love a good Twitter space. Any questions from you? Any thoughts or anything you want to ask, or even discuss in more detail? Hi, mate. How's it going?
Hello, Gérard. How are you?
Yeah, great. How's it going?
It's going well. No, there isn't anything in particular. Maybe something around if we have to do extra physical work, extra conditioning, either because the session isn't going to be intense enough or high enough volume. Would you do extra running or sprints at the beginning of the session, or during, or at the end, if you have to do it on a pose isolated?
It's an interesting one, that. It's an interesting question, debate. I don't think there's a right and wrong answer. I'd be interested to know what your thoughts are, because obviously you're doing this day to day, right? I got asked a similar question probably about 20 minutes ago, where we were just having a chat with a club, and I think I sort of said, but for me, how can you design the physical sort of development within your games? And I know there's certain.
Sometimes we have to make a trade-off as well.
Yeah.
And sometimes we have to be more tactical, maybe, and that will the consequence will be that we trade off some of the physical load.
Yeah, of course.
Especially in terms of sprints, where we're talking about sharing pitch with some another age groups, for instance, without space to bring that out within game.
Yeah, well, that's that's a challenge, isn't it? But so it depends on your context, doesn't it? I think everything comes back to context, doesn't it? And what area have you got?
It depends on what you prioritize. So it's something I've been talking to people about for the last week or so.
Right.
Because it's a conversation and something we've had to do at the club.
Okay.
And if you think that the sprinting is more important than the football, you should do the sprints first. If you think football is more important than the sprints, you should do the sprints after, because you want to be maximum.
Should you though?
You should be 100% for what you think is more important.
I'm going to play.
That's my understanding of it so far.
I love it, and this is what's great, because I don't think there's a right and wrong, and definitely this is what I want to do. I want to chat to whether it's one coach, a million coaches, just bounce ideas. For me, I think it depends what you're wanting to get out of it. Because I've equally done it where, why can't you do? I've seen some rationales where people have said, for example, they'll do physical stuff at the end, and they'll go, and the physical coach or the S&C would say to us, no, but you're not going to get the returns. Actually, yeah, but he's just trained for however many minutes, 45 minutes, 60 minutes, whatever it is. Physically, he's not, in terms of what's in the tank, but that might resemble some of the challenges that he may face in certain competitions and certain games. So we're actually going to do it that way rather than, I guess it depends what you're trying to test and what you're trying to measure. There'll be some sports scientists listening who would go, well, if I'm trying to test or I'm trying to measure something, I'd probably do it at the start before the football. I don't know if it's a case of prioritizing one or the other. I think it depends on, perhaps this, I could be wrong, just my opinion. I think it depends on what is it you're trying to get out of it. But equally, we just had a conversation, me and another club, for example, literally probably 25 minutes before I did this. And we were talking about it where there was an individual, under 18s player, high performer, high potential. He's in and around the first team. He's got his accels, his decels, he's through the roof. Distances covered, brilliant, right? So, and it's how, link it back to individual development. How do you stretch and challenge that individual within the collective? And my response was, of course, you're always changing holistically, but I would be, if there's certain targeted physical development that I want to work on, if it's being faster and more explosive, I would design activities, whether I've got loads of space or not, it doesn't have to be unopposed. It could be in 1v1s. And they're working for a short amount of time, but it's fast and explosive. They're performing more sprints and they're having to recover quicker. You typically get that in your sort of one-on-one type duels. If it's playing quicker and recovering faster, it might be 3v3, 2v2, 4v4, overload, underload type stuff. If it's physically, you want to work on outlasting the opposition, the endurance, obviously it'd be your bigger numbers stuff, 8v8, 11v11, endurance. But I would typically go back to answer the question around the physical. I'd be thinking, well, how physically demanding is the game? If the game's, let's say the game is 10 out of 10, what is that scenario? What is it that we're trying to work on, that action? How many times does that occur and how physically demanding is it? And then I would design games around that, even if it's in the balls going in or the recoveries or any physical stuff that they have to do outside of the football stuff. It's interesting working in Morocco with Christophe. Christophe was very much a gym guy, have him in the gym. Similar to what you were saying there, Jonas, he'd have them doing physical stuff. It'd be sprint, it'd be stuff unopposed, even if it's with a ball. But he wouldn't be with a ball necessarily loads of like ball tactically. He'd be doing a lot of physical loading that he's done through his PhD. I'd be probably more the other way, where even if you haven't got loads of area, I'd be looking at it thinking, how long can the players maintain that game speed player action during a normal duration? Like whatever optimal looks like, how long could they last that for? How many seconds, how many minutes? And then I would think about then designing practices around that, or even creating like optimal pairings for physical development. So like creating certain games where you've got a little bit of both. You might have like 1v1 type duel stuff, and they're getting that, and they're getting the explosive. But then because of the design of the area that you're working in, they're playing at highest pace and managing the rhythm within a 6v4 or whatever it may be. But I guess it comes back to like what physical development are you trying to train? Because the question that I got asked today was around this under 18 player that's covering distances, accels, decels are unbelievable. Is this, is that? But equally, they want to keep making sure that his physical development is in line with or above what's going on in the first team. So who are the players that are typically playing in his positions? What are they doing on them? And then obviously I put together a couple of practices for that. But yeah, what's your thoughts on that? Agree, disagree? I'm curious.
It's really so. It's really similar to where I sit with it.
Right.
And this adding isolated sprints is something that is quite new. I think it adds a different dimension when you think of the desire needed to go and perform them, and the resilience it can build. Because when you're in a game, everything's camouflaged as it's just that extrinsic motivation to go and play. I do think there's an element of young players need to develop further than that, and some of it will involve less enjoyable stuff, such as running.
Yeah.
It's a much longer debate, and it's not as simple as prioritization. Like I said before.
No, agreed.
Ideally for me, it would be in the sessions. Yeah. So if we can get all the physical returns out while playing, perfect. I think often for some reason or another, we can't, or if we do, it's probably still very uneven. So that some get the physical returns, some get too little. Right. And we need to find ways to almost compensate. But it's been really interesting to listen now for 15-20 minutes. It's been really interesting. But
perfect.
Shoes off now and do the session.
Good luck in the session tonight. I'm literally curling it off. And let's connect back up. I want to know how it goes.
Yeah. All right.
Take care, man.
Yeah. Let's catch up soon.
See you soon. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye. Bye.
Thanks everyone who's listening, and really excited. Just want to keep doing these things. And we've obviously Yaz is on now, just having a little listen, and we're going to be doing more where it's a regular day. So there'll be myself, Coach Yaz, Coaches Network podcast every Sunday. We're going to have more people, and that'll be our one regular day. And we'll stream it in the app, and we'll do it through Twitter Spaces and everything else. So really excited. Thank you for everyone who tuned in and who dipped off, and feel free to listen back to this. It's been recorded on YouTube Live. So again, you'll be able to watch it back. Thank you.